Sexually disordered adults are facilitating a generation of cheaters. Why do people cheat? This is a big and faceted topic with no simple answer, but there are answers. If you've been through this or are going through a cheating situation, this video will be a balm for you. Send this to whomever needs it. We'd like to immediately scream and shout that the cheater is a scumbag who only wanted physical validation at the emotional and mental expense of their partner. As in all situations, we need to pick a bad guy to make ourselves feel better. We need a target for our malice. And since cheating on your partner is one of the worst things you can do, it's easy to pick out the bad guy. But is it really that simple? Why do people cheat? Let's get to analyzing. Please note, I am not here to knock on cheaters either, believe it or not. Cheaters, you might also find this video to be a balm. First of all, why do we view cheating as immoral? Going behind your partner's back to have an emotional or physical affair is generally seen as wrong in most societies. We don't wish to take the word of a cheater on any stance they may take, since they showed such massive moral failings in a forbidden way. Robert thinks that guy might make a good president. What do we care what a cheater thinks? Since when is that guy morally sound? People view cheating as objectively wrong. Why? The short of it is that the cheater broke a vow. One of the few vows people would like to think means something, because they benefit from it. Committing to a relationship tells the other and all your family and friends that you are going to love and cherish your partner, even at the expense of being self-sacrificial. And when you don't, you break a vow. You break your word. Certain behaviors are expected of each person of the couple. To love in sickness and in health, for better or worse, till death do you part. And when someone breaks that vow, they are seen as repugnant. And that's because a person is only as good as their word. But we would be awfully silly if we were to continue without defining what cheating is. There are many people who would like to believe that cheating is different for each couple. In truth, it's not. And that is simply because of how our brains are wired. People would love to believe that they are the arbiters of value in any position they have power. But that's still moral relativism. And as we know, moral relativism doesn't work, especially when applied to relationships. This is simply because of biological and sociological facts. But I'm trying to stay on track, so let's keep pushing forward. Some people view flirting with someone else as cheating, while others see viewing pornography as not cheating. So what is the answer? Because there is one. Cheating is a longing for someone other than the one you're committed to fill a specific role in your life for the purpose of emotional, mental, or physical validation or gratification, when those specific types of validation and gratifications should come from the appointed role of your committed partner. So to break this down, if you seek out someone else to fill the need that only a partner should be filling, that is cheating. Emotional cheating is real. Mental cheating is real. Seeking out specific emotional or physical comforts that only a partner should be fulfilling is cheating. Mentally fantasizing about what it would be like to be with someone else instead is cheating, because you are devoting energy and love that should be reserved for your spouse. That's why it would crush them to know that you think about life with someone else. They understand that you desire someone else to fill the particular role that you made them think that you only wanted them to fill, because they were enough for you. Seeking out sexual fulfillment through viewing someone else's sexual parts, when that fulfillment is a type of devotion that ought to be reserved for your spouse, is cheating. And this is part of why pornography is cheating, whether both spouses agree to watch it or not. And when I say pornography, I mean even pornographic TV shows, because any sexual display for the purpose of an erotic response is pornography. Whether that response is triggered in you or not, it's still pornography because of the motivation behind the display. Now, For the people who think that there is a clear line in the sand in your relationship when it comes to viewing pornography and your partner's fidelity for you, there's not. It's just the frog in boiling water. They are excited by something that should be reserved for only their spouse exciting them, and this is because of the bond of fidelity. So then any mental cheating or fantasizing about that person, at least in the moment, and gain sexual fulfillment in that way, which ought to be reserved for their spouse. And just like a slippery slope, they need more and harder sexual displays in order to ready themselves for sex. And this is scientifically demonstrable. This is why if you want to shoot your future relationship in the head, you watch porn. It is the surest way to ruin your marriage and sex life. So now if your body isn't sexy enough to ready your partner for sex, especially if you're older and less healthy than the sexual object of addiction, or you're a woman and your body isn't near as perfect because you've given your spouse children, they need to watch or fantasize about someone else whose body is. And they do stop relying on fidelity and emotions that would ready them to make love for the simple fact of how our brains are wired. They train themselves to no longer be excited by your body, which is a tragedy because sexual desire should be brought on by devotion. Sex is an expression of devotion and its emotional response to it. So, in short, seeking out someone else to fulfill the sexual role of your partner, whether physically or mentally, is cheating. I'm sorry, but there's just no line in the sand which is understood won't be crossed. It's a truck going downhill and a line in the pavement is not going to stop it. Physical cheating begins with mental cheating. Now, are you automatically a cheater for mentally longing for someone else or momentarily wishing someone else was in the role of your spouse? No. No more than someone experiencing anger is a violent brute. But these mental tendencies and behaviors need to be identified as requiring change before the cheating path starts to be trod. The path to cheating is laid out by 1. The normalization of sexual deviancy, and 2. The lack of a moral and happy, healthy upbringing with a solid example given to you by parents living in a happy, wholesome, loving marriage. People, if you do not model a good relationship with your spouse for your children, they are very, 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 very unlikely to end up in one themselves. They have to fight an uphill battle to end up in a happy relationship by shunning what they subconsciously learned relationships are supposed to be like. You've normalized unhealthy mindsets and behaviors. You've normalized that the only thing that dictates a good relationship are good feelings. And without those good feelings, your relationship is meaningless. And it's okay to cheat and break your vows. And side note, this is why we see parents fighting so hard against the normalization of sexual deviancy in schools. It's already nearly impossible to find someone who can love and be in a devoted relationship. And pushing sexual deviancy on children now in schools, teaching them about pornography and masturbation and confusing them about what their bodies and genders are and what relationships should be like, is only going to create more and more miserable people, a more miserable generation, one incapable of loving anything, especially the romantic partner or children. It's a vicious cycle that heroic parents are standing up to, even for children who aren't their own, in the face of idiotic ridicule. Sexually disordered adults are facilitating a generation of cheaters. So those two things, the normalization of sexual deviancy and the lack of one's parents' healthy marriage, can put you onto the path of cheaterhood. But there still needs to be something that motivates that journey. So, what drives someone to cheat? Unfortunately, there are a lot of reasons. But at the core of all reasons is the ultimate reason: emotional validation. No, people don't cheat because they're horny. They cheat because they're lonely. Now, you might ask, how can someone be lonely if they're in a relationship, especially to a good, devoted person? Well, I'm happy you asked. People oftentimes feel misunderstood, mostly due to a traumatic past, so they might not feel like they can be themselves with their partner. The biggest fear most people have is rejection. That's why public speaking is one of the most common phobias. So they hide who they really are. Let's say that you're in a good relationship with a good spouse, but you still cheat on them, despite knowing that it would crush them and you don't want to hurt them or lose your happy marriage. You cheated because you didn't feel fulfilled by your partner somehow. Maybe you were drawn to someone for a certain reason. They looked like an ex and you wanted to have closure on unfinished business, or they made you feel safe when vulnerable, or you worked well together to problem solve. Whatever the reason, the person became a safe place for you. They became someone who you felt you were accepted by, or at least not rejected by. Someone might be sexually disordered and they don't want their spouse to know that they're into something weird. So they'll find consolation in being accepted by someone else who doesn't reject them for being into that weird thing and, may be willing to do it with them. We would all like to say with cut and dry confidence that cheaters are simply narcissists, and that's all there is to it. The thing with human behavior, though, is that there's always a reason for it. And people are oftentimes controlled by fear. Am I trying to say that someone can be scared into the arms of another? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Does it make it right? No, not at all. But there's always a reason for everything. Whether that reason is illogical or not. Whether the cheater is a jerk or not. Sometimes jerk cheaters don't have as high a self-esteem as they pretend to have. So they seek out sex to feel more secure. It doesn't make them any less of a jerk for cheating. But the reason for cheating is still the same. Fear. Insecurity. I want to add that for this reason of someone else of the opposite sex becoming a safe place for someone to seek comfort is exactly why strong boundaries are necessary in marriages. You should not be spending a copious amount of time with someone of the opposite sex. And that goes for work environments too. And if you truly want to fight hard against this statement, then you are valuing something else more than your marriage. Shouldn't you care more about your marriage than whatever alone time spent with someone else means to you? Or are you a control freak? It's always been very bizarre to me to encounter those who fight so damn hard to have exclusive friendships, as in friendships closed off to spouses, with members of the opposite sex. I have always had more male friends than female friends, but those friendships are open to my husband's presence. I talk on the phone to my guy friends with my husband nearby, not to listen in, but just to be respectful. Your value system is poor if you want to cut your spouse out of your friendships with members of the opposite sex. Because the fact is, you're opening yourself up to finding comfort in a way that ought to be reserved for your spouse, in a friend. And as soon as that person becomes a safe place for you in a way that your spouse isn't, that's when mental and emotional cheating begins. Now, backtracking a little. People can absolutely be primed to be cheaters, and I touched down on those two specific ways. But we also cannot ignore the role of addiction. Would it shock you to know that I've been cheated on? Yes. Despite looking how I do, and having a clean past, and treating the men I'm with like kings, I have been cheated on 5 times. That means that various men locked me down and still turned to someone else. This can happen to anyone. One of those people even follows me. He'll see this, and we're friendly. I don't hold anything against him. I'm in a happy marriage to a wonderful, faithful man, and I have no bitterness. But one of the reasons why I'm not bitter about being cheated on is because I know why. Yes, for every single one. 3 of those guys had porn addictions before I even came along, and I didn't find out until afterwards. And remember, I mentioned that the best way to shoot your future relationship in the head is to be laissez-faire about pornography. I have a whole other video. Of course, I have a whole other video. The line I say every single video. I have a whole other video about the psychological, sociological, and biological effects of pornography. And I actually used to travel and give talks on this topic. So those particular men had already gone down a path laid out for them. And honestly, there's little someone can do to fight someone else's addiction. And pornography is extremely addictive. You can look into that in my other video. The two others had extremely low self-worth, and in their own words, didn't believe someone like me could love them. So they sought consolation elsewhere. Remember, when you challenge someone's reality, and here that would be the reality that they don't think they're lovable, they must rebel in some way in order to seek comfort and familiarity. When one of them told me they cheated on me, and I mean sexually cheated on me, he said he needed to remind himself that he wasn't good enough for me. He needed to remind himself that he's a scumbag. That's very sad. His reality was very, very sad. And I wasn't mad, quite honestly. I was 19 and not looking to marry him or anyone else anytime soon. Despite the fact that I got married at 22. Those guys weren't bad guys. Well, one of them was definitely a bad guy. We don't talk about him. The other ones, though, they weren't scumbags. They simply lacked the value system vital to have a committed, loving relationship. And honestly, most people do. That should terrify anyone watching this. Most people are broken and just want solace from someone else. Most people feel rejected at the very core of their being and just want to be known and accepted. The deepest desire of anyone is just to be fully known and loved. Most people feel shame when their reality is that they aren't good enough for someone else. And that's terrible. Cheaters oftentimes become cheaters because they are seeking consolation and validation. And priming oneself with sexual disorderedness just makes mental and emotional cheating that much easier, because addiction then comes into play. I recently spoke to someone who was caught cheating on his wife. When I asked him why he continued even when he knew it was wrong and he had a happy marriage, he said that it was like he became hooked. And he did. He was lacking a type of high he felt he couldn't get anywhere else, which was for a woman to look at him with longing and understanding and want him, even in his vulnerability. And that's really difficult to walk away from. It's horrible still to cheat, and I'm not trying to excuse it, because I take vows very seriously. But we must step back and look at why we have this cultural issue of such casual cheating. There are reasons why, and those reasons can and should be corrected. But it all begins first with information and understanding, education and love, and of course, humility. We're a broken society, but unless this issue is looked upon and taken seriously, we're only going to continue the cycle of more and more cheaters and less happy relationships and less happy children, and it will go on and on. If you've been cheated on, I know what that feels like. And I'm sorry you've gone through this trauma, which, yes, is earth-shattering. Please seek the support you need to heal. If you are currently mentally, emotionally, or physically cheating on someone, look in the mirror and ask yourself why. And if you care about the other person, you will seek help. And if not, let them go. And I have many other videos about relationships that might be helpful to you. As always, I'm Regina Lux with Veritas on the Rocks. Ignite the truth and boldly go.